Today we're continuing our Watch Terminology 101 mini-series. Zach, we want to talk about dial and case terminology today. Let's start off by subdial.
Sure. So a subdial is a smaller dial that is on your dial. So think of just an extra smaller circle on your main dial, and it could be used for hours or minutes, or your running seconds on a chronograph. It could be used for your sub-seconds, so the second hand, instead of being centralized and having all three hands at the center, you might have two of them, hours and minutes at the center, and then a smaller subdial down at, in most cases, either 6 o'clock or like 4:30. It could also be used for power reserve. So it's just a smaller dial on the main dial that is associated with some sort of complication.
Excellent. Okay, so if it's a situation where it's late at night, or you're in your bedroom and you're in the middle of the night, you wake up, the next thing is something that may be important to you, that's lume.
Mm-hmm. So lume is short for luminescence, essentially. And it's what makes your indices, your hands, glow on your watch. So in most cases, it's superluminova, although you have watch companies like Ball, a few others that use tritium, which is actually just little small tubes of a radioactive material that always glows. So most lume is charged by non-LED lighting or the sun, whereas the tritium tubes are always glowing. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 hours into the evening, it's still going to be glowing, whereas most superluminova watches are not going to still be luminescent after 5 hours.
So Zach, the next one is noticeable from a mile away, so to say, no matter what manufacturer makes it, and that's a skeleton dial.
Mm-hmm. So a skeleton dial is essentially a cutout dial that lets you see the inner workings of the watch. So that could be, in its most tame form, maybe it's just what they call an open heart watch, where you just have a cutout around the escapement, essentially the balance wheel, and you can see that moving. Whereas some are much more skeletonized, and you can see the entire gear train. So, whatever the level, it definitely is interesting, and it draws attention to mechanical watches that you wouldn't have otherwise. Of course, you get the benefits of being able to see your beautiful movement without having to take the watch off your wrist as well. So, on the more affordable end, you've got, industrial finished movements that maybe aren't that interesting to look at, but on the higher end, had the pleasure of seeing an absolutely gorgeous Breguet skeleton tourbillon, a week ago, and the entire movement was hand engraved. It was just really, really incredibly well finished. It was platinum, so it had, it had nice weight. It was just a really impressive watch. You can really find some highly complicated, really well designed and I guess decorated is the word I'm looking. There you go, well finished. Thank you. So well-finished skeleton dials out there for sure.
Totally agree, and they're gorgeous. And even on some of the less expensive movements, it's still cool to see them. Even like I've got one that's just only a couple $100, but when I show my kids, they're still like, okay, that's really cool to see all of it working together. So that's a wide range from a couple $100 to $1.2 million, $1.3 for those. So the next one we want to talk about is definitely an art form. It gets stamped a lot, but when it's actually done, it is just absolutely time-consuming, but absolutely gorgeous. Talk to us about guilloché.
Sure. So guilloché is a pattern, essentially just a really intricate pattern that is put on a dial. So traditionally that would have been done with a like a rose lathe, and it would have essentially manually, skillfully been put on that dial. You have some people that take it to the level of true just hand engraving on it, and then yes, you do have some that are just going to stamp it. But if you ever look at a dial and it's not necessarily textured, but it has some sort of really intricate pattern, whether it's little squares or otherwise, that's what guilloché is.
Absolutely. I think that is a fantastic look on a timepiece, personally. So the next one, let's talk about, is a tachymeter.
So a tachymeter, now we're kind of leaving the dial and we're going to the bezel. So a tachymeter is a scale that's used for measuring speed when you're using a chronograph. So if you've ever looked at like the Speedmaster Professional, what you're wearing today, you know, at the first 15 minutes of the dial, for instance, you start out with these really, really high numbers and they're closely grouped together, and then as you go, it kind of spreads out more. So the best way that I can kind of put that is, let's say you're going down the interstate and you are in the passenger seat, buddy's driving, and you want to know how fast he's going. You don't want to look at the speedometer, you can't see it. So you pass mile marker 2 and you start your chronograph. When you cover a full mile, and let's say you hit mile marker 3, when you stop that chronograph, wherever your chronograph hand is pointing at on that tachymeter bezel, it's going to tell you how many of that particular distance per hour you're going. So if it's miles and you covered a mile, let's say it's pointing at 80, then you know he's doing 80 miles an hour. Same goes for kilometers. You can use any set amount of distance and measure it the same way, as long as it's just some sort of standardized distance that you're using.
It's just so fascinating to think how long this technology's been out, and how these people sit down and came up with it is just amazing to me. We'd like to take just a second to ask you to take just a moment and subscribe if you would. Like, share, or comment. We really do appreciate all of your support. It means the world to Zach and myself and our whole team. And as we grow this, we just want y'all to come along with on the ride with us, and we do thank each and every one of you. Zach, for the last one, tell us about a pusher.
So a pusher, again, goes back to a chronograph. So a pusher is essentially the button that's on the side of the case, in most cases for a chronograph complication. So the ones that you see at like 2 and 4 o'clock alongside or on either side of the crown, those would be pushers. So generally it's starting and stopping some complication. And then you also have pushers in the form of your more complicated pieces. So let's say a perpetual calendar or an annual calendar that's got a moon face, something like that, where you cannot do all of your adjustments through the crown. And they're just these little openings in the side of the case that are, you know, there's a depressible little cylinder in there that's even with the case, so you're not having to worry about water coming in or anything. But most of those watches are going to come with a tool that you use to actually press that little pusher in, and it'll reset something like your moon phase, or by reset I mean it'll advance it, or you know, maybe it's the day complication that you're not setting through the crown. It just varies by the brand, but anything that you are essentially pushing in to make an adjustment to the watch or to use some complication function.
That's the end of the list for today. We hope that you've learned something about dials and case terminology today. We'd love to answer any questions you may have in the comment section, or any of these that are your favorites. We would love to hear about it. We thank y'all so much for watching. We'll see you soon.